Hello, my name is David Lau. I'm a product support specialist at Autodesk, and today we're going to be building up your Up and Ready IQ. Today's presentation is by Avto Chichava, and he's going to be talking about power skills for network deployment. Avto, next slide, please. So just to give you an idea of our webinar format, if you haven't attended the last three, we basically want to build up your Up and Ready software IQ. There's always going to be a presenter and a moderator, and basically the presentation is going to be 30 minutes and 30 minutes of QA. You'll notice off to the side, in the UI for the webinar, there's actually a window for questions and chat. Please feel free to put questions out at any time, and we will try to answer them live. And we'll also share some of the questions at the end of the presentation. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Avto, and you may now continue.
Hello everybody, and thank you very much for joining our webinar. So this webinar is our fourth webinar from the series of Build Your Autodesk Up and Ready IQ, which basically this series of webinars will touch base Autodesk product installation issues, deployment creation issues, troubleshooting issues, issues of understanding the log files, and many other tips and tricks one can successfully use when installing, downloading, or creating a network deployment for any Autodesk product or a suite. So up until now, we had three webinars. The first one was Build Your Autodesk Network Licensing IQ. In this webinar, we discussed the things like how to set up a license server and many other tips and tricks one can come across when setting up a license server. Second one was related to how to build the license file. So how to combine the license file in case you have many different license files, how to read the license file, how to identify issues in build the combined license files, and so forth. The third one was related to the installation IQ. So that's basically in the third webinar we discussed issues related to Autodesk product installation, mainly installation done through the web interface like Install Now or some other installation methods we have. And down on your screen, you now see the HTTPS URLs for each webinar's PowerPoint slides. Each slide contains the links to the other resources discussed during those webinars, and you're free to go and download those files on your leisure time and go through them and check out the links. As you can see, for your future references, when it comes to accessing the public folders for the webinar recordings or PowerPoint slides, it's just basically https://autodesk.box.com/up and ready IQ, and then it comes number 1 for the first, number 2 for the second, third for the third one, and the fourth one for our current one. So in this webinar, particularly, we'll be talking about how to create a network deployment for Autodesk software. What are the known issues with deployment creation? What can you do with the deployment? What's the differences between creating a deployment and installing a product? And what's happening behind the network deployment creation process? Our upcoming webinar, the next week's webinar, we will be talking about how to understand the log files. You identify the error messages during the installation of Autodesk product, and try to kind of figure out the ways of solving and bypassing it. Again, so to start deployment creation, what do we need? We need a kind of system which meets at least the minimum system requirements for a given product. And on Autodesk website, we do have resources available for you, such as like autodesk.com/system requirements. Now, if you click on this link, it's going to take you to Autodesk website. It basically lists all the products we do have for commercial usage and their supported operating systems. Minimum requirements from the system point of view. There is options for AutoCAD, for example, point products such as AutoCAD, Maya, Revit products, 3ds Max simulation, or suite products. So if you happen to use the only AutoCAD from your suite, so then probably the wise will be for you to go and check AutoCAD system requirements as opposed to the suite requirements, because the suite requirements could be like more tight, because the system can be compatible with AutoCAD but may not be compatible for 3ds Max, so that's why the system might not appear into the list, and you may get discouraged. Anyhow, so the second one is the first link was about minimum system requirements, but then there is an optimal system requirement. The optimal system requirement based on the hardware of your system you have. So there's a link for it, like autodesk.com/hardware. So if you go, I'm not exactly sure why it happened, because honestly, that should be there. Okay, so that's basically the system find recommend hardware web page. So you can check the systems tested by Autodesk QA teams for each product or suite to find out which systems has been used to test the product. Or the most important thing is to check the graphics hardware. So the graphics hardware, that's for your Autodesk product. Like let's say for AutoCAD, you have an option to select a version of it. You have option to select your operating system, and then select NVIDIA, AMD, or whatever your graphics card manufacturer is, and then check the old cards. And after that, you can just go for it and click Find. That's going to display you all the AutoCAD-based products, all Autodesk-based products, compatible video cards and video drivers. If you just click over here, for example, this card, right, Quadro, so it has a shield at the start. That means card is certified and recommended by Autodesk, while the other cards, that's cards being tested, but they're not certified, not recommended. It doesn't mean that the system might not work there, but the program might not work on those cards, but its performance may not be desirable. So if you go to any of tested video cards, you have after that option to check the certified drivers, meaning the drivers which was used at the time of testing the product on your hardware. And you also have option to download the certified drivers. Now the hardware manufacturer may have a higher version of video drivers, which may work or may not work. So it's always good to kind of double check the driver versions against the certified graphics hardware list for your product. Okay, so that's a minimum thing. So you have to have really the systems like ready for your Autodesk products, because if your systems are not there, your deployment creation may create, but you may have problems after that installing the product, and then you can start going back and forth in a frustrating mode. Okay, so and next thing to create a successful deployment is to have a kind of actual rights to do so. So this is administrator rights you have to have on the system you're creating a deployment. As well, it's good to have admin rights on the systems you are taking the installation. You have your installation content available, and the target system you are hosting the deployments from there. So from admin rights, basically what you need to have a modified folder permissions for sure. So you can assign that to the network share. You can give everybody full rights if you need to, and so on and so forth. You have to be also able to modify system registry and modify settings in your security applications, such as like stopping the firewall, stopping the antivirus software, because during the deployment creation, those security softwares can hinder the deployment creation process, as well as the subsequent product installation from your deployment. You need to be able to stop the running tasks, like any kind of conflicting task you identify during this process. And you should be able to, like restart the system and in diagnostics mode, install or uninstall the products as well. So at this moment, so we have two requirements met, which is the system and the rights to work on the system in terms of creating a deployment. Now the third one is to get the software. You have to have full installation package on your system, which can come to you as a downloadable option or as installation media. Now if you are a subscription customer and you access to your subscription account and you are a contract administrator or software coordinator, you'll be able to kind of download Autodesk product. Now the default setting is install now, so but if you click the triangle over there, So you will see other hidden options you can obtain the installation content on your system. So basically these are install now, download now, browser download, and now they download via virtual agent. That's a different approach to getting the Autodesk software, which basically share the same technology as browser download method. And you also have option to request Autodesk product installation media. In this link, if you click, when you have your PowerPoint slides, it's going to take you to Autodesk knowledge base article to guide you through, how to request the media. Now, in this listed 4 options, like install now, that's the only option which does not allow you to create a deployment, because during that time, what happens, the installer is on Autodesk website, Autodesk installer servers, and that tool is used only when you are actually installing the product on a system you're running the installation. Now, all these steps we talked about our previous webinars, like IQ3 webinars, and we're just going to go through very quickly on these. If you want to have a kind of detailed understanding of it, I would suggest you checking the previous webinar PowerPoint slides or recording, but for your convenience, I included some slides here so that you could have all the best plus and cons of each method. For example, download now, what do you need at this time? You're downloading a product from Autodesk website. Before it happens, you need to install Download Manager on your system, which basically keeps open connection between your system and Autodesk servers, and then uses the download, that controls this download process. And the end result is going to be that on your system you can have fully extracted installer package. So if in case of building design suite, it's going to be like over 40 gigabytes in terms of the building design suite ultimate if you go with that. Okay, so you have to be also make sure that you have enough space on your disk. And there is some kind of recommendation way why you need to use the download now method. That's for deployment creation mainly, or later installation processes. We also have links here, the help button. It's going to take you to Autodesk help page to kind of find out different ways of troubleshooting any issues coming through the download now process. Again, all these details are in the previous webinar, and I would strongly advise you to kind of checking out the previous webinar. And here is also the links for you guys, to look into it, later on, like check out everything. And also the PowerPoint has a comments field. You can see there are lots of comments underneath too. So the second option, is the browser download. So that's something I really like, because with the browser download method, what you have is you're downloading self-extracted installers on your system. So if your system, if you're downloading a suite product, and I pick the building design suite because it's one of the biggest suite, it's going to have 4 different parts. Like each part is around 4 gigabytes. That's the limit of how much the route encryption can encrypt the data. And after the 4, in the next second part's also going to be 4 gigabytes, third 4, and the fourth one, whatever remains. So in this case, 13 gigabytes is going to be 4 gigabyte sized files, and fourth one will be a little less. And the key things here is that you have to save them, all these 4 parts, into the same folder. And when you start installing it or creating a deployment, you need to start on your first file to start extracting the installation content on your local system. By default, it extracts into the C drive Autodesk folder, but you do have an option to guide the extracted installation folder on any other folder, any other drive or network share on the system. Okay, so that's the Autodesk download via virtual agent. That's basically the same style as the technology behind this as a browser download method. It uses the browser's built-in file download mechanism. And so the only good thing, with building is with downloading a product from the virtual agent is that you do not need to have a subscription support or any kind of privileged account status. So you can go to the Open Ready Block site or autodesk.com/register, start the virtual agent, such as like Ask. It opens up a small window for you, and it has kind of like options for you to download products And the good thing, also with this method is that you see all the parts as clickable items, and not everything comes out at once as it happens during the subscription website. So that's what you also have a better chance to kind of like see what you're downloading when you're downloading and collecting them into the same folder. Okay, so at this time now we got all we needed. So we verified our system meets requirements. We are the admin, and we do have uncorrupted installer on our system. Now starts the fun stuff, which is creating a deployment. So when you start the product installation, right, so you double-click on the setup exe file, it opens up the installer wizard for you, and it gives you these three options, such as create deployment, install, and install tools and utilities. This doesn't affect to us because in this there is some other suite or product-specific tools, such as like License Server Manager, for example, that installs the product right away on your system. And the create a deployment, that's what we'll be talking about this time. So creating deployment is not installation. It is building the installer package the way you want for the later installation purposes. Not like way you want, I mean like, do the certain kind of configuration for your product, add certain tweak or modify the support path, add some extra applications or add-ons to the deployment, and deselect certain options as well, and do many other tricks, we'll be talking about later on on these slides. So in this slide, like we have, let's say we are sitting in front of the computer B, okay, and we have installer available on computer A, and we would like to create a deployment which will be hosted from the computer C. Now, what happens at this time is, like when you start the setup exe file on your system in the computer B, everything is happening on your computer B. Okay, so here is the task manager, which tells you what processes are started for you to kind of create a deployment. And the first one is the Explorer exe. So that's basically to resolve the path issues from your source files and target files. And then MSI exec, the Windows installer, and setup exe, Autodesk component, which has to supply needed information to the MSI and to the Windows installer to kind of configure the installation package for you. So the main work is happening on the temp folder of the system you're sitting on. So sitting at, that's computer B, right? So the best thing for would be, instead of these three ways, three computers involved in the deployment creation, to have at least installer on the system you're creating a deployment on, and then you can kind of redirect the target system from where you want to host the deployment somewhere else. So the temp folder gets lots of data during the product deployment, and it's good to kind of have it empty. And in case you're running out of this space on your C drive, because by default temp folder is the user's temp folder, who is building the deployment, is on a C drive, like C drive users and app data and so on and so forth. So it's good to kind of modify that information to the space you have on your local system, like a different hard drive, for example, where you have enough space, to not to trigger. In terms of the building design suite ultimate, again, I'm picking this building design suite ultimate only because it's the biggest one from the suite. So we have, okay, so at the end of the deployment creation, when everything goes fine, right, just the installation log files created during the deployment creation is over 450 megabytes. It's half gig of size. And during the deployment creation, again, it's Wizard kind of copies the source files on the temp folder. It can go over like 5 gigabytes of this space, therefore attempt to proceed deployment creation for you. So that's a must thing to be aware of when you're creating a deployment. So the weakest system you are sitting on, if that's your laptop, so it doesn't really matter, how fast and how powerful are your source and host computers. Your laptop is a bottleneck, and it's going to be affected on the speed it has. And also, it also depends what type of connection do you have to your host or target system. Okay. So the best thing, sometimes what you have to do is you just kind of create a deployment on the same system you are and saving the deployment in the same system you're running creating a deployment. In case you have some problems with networking, accessing to your host system, and then you can kind of move that deployment, manually on your deployment host, server, or system. And down the slides, we'll show you how to do that. Okay, so power skills for network deployment, create a deployment, right? So here are known issues, known workarounds, quick starts for suite deployment tips. So all these are available on our Up and Ready site. So you guys can kind of go there and you can kind of really check out all the tips and tricks available for you to kind of understand, such as like, let's say, defeating 256 character limit. So that's the main thing when it comes to deployment creation, because Windows installer is not able to resolve anything above the 256 character. So if your deployment is stored or stored like a nested file path, such as, let's say, like C drives, like a computer name, then Autodesk software with space in it, and then a kind of version of the software, then the kind of department you want that software to be shipped. It goes back up. It can kind of be such a nested that it can easily reach the 256 character, because 256 character is not the source point of your deployment creation, but it needs to be any files needed during the Windows installation. So that file path should not exceed 256 characters. Otherwise, it's going to fail during deployment creation or installation time. It'll get some copy function could not be used or things like that. So again, so here is all the kind of links for you guys. You can go and check what to do, how to do all this kind of stuff to make it work for you. And there are some other tips and tricks as well, such as modified deployment and freezing. If you find that, you have to find out, maybe the deployment, when you modify the deployment may need to have an access to the original installation media, and if for any reason it doesn't have an access, or it takes too long, your system to resolve that path, due to your network limitations or bandwidth, or right, so you may kind of start freezing it. So there's also tips for you what to do at that time, how to save space during deployment creation for the suites, and how to move a deployment image to another computer. That's kind of a very important thing. And I have a special slide for it down the road. And also kind of very basic deployments, for an ARC file, for example, modifying the deployment and the missing program, and things like that. So these are all available on our blog site, upandready.com, upandready.typepad.com. That's strongly why I would really suggest you guys to kind of bookmark this website and visit it at like a daily basis or day after day, because on that website, we really have everything we encounter when helping some other customers, or discover ourselves, and we troubleshoot, or making things work in terms of the installation of Autodesk products. And any new issues which come up, any kind of conflicts with the other applications, we have all posted there. And David, my moderator here, he is the main guy behind it. He does really tremendous job to keep this up and ready running. Okay, so now we started deployment creation. So the first thing, the best thing is to kind of use UNC path, even though you can use the map drive, to store deployment. But the advisable thing is to use the UNC path, because map, that's extra kind of layer of resolving the others, right? So, so we recommend to use the map drive. Then by default it's selected. Then include only products required for this deployment configuration. So this is, by default is checked, but it depends again what you want to do with your deployment image in a later time. So in case you have a suite in deployment, and if you just create a deployment for AutoCAD, and you have this option checked, now when deployment is created, that deployment will be only AutoCAD based, from the suite. And later on, if you would like to modify deployment to add extra products, such as, let's say, 3ds Max, the deployment creation widget will need access to the original media, and it can again have freezing issues, have some other issues. So if you, I personally kind of have this one unchecked, and create a deployment, and with deployment image, I do have everything you need which I need for the later usage. And then I can use modify deployment tool to modify and alter deployment any ways I would like to. So then you have option with this, and also you have option to identify the log file. So this path here is basically it's like a system name, a share name, and a log file. Once the application is installed from the deployment, log file keeps track of on which system was application installed and what was installed from this deployment on that particular system. For example, if system had all the AutoCAD product or Autodesk product prerequisites pre-installed, deployment will not install those, and you will see there, which prerequisites were installed on system so and so, and which not, and that's going to give you the good idea to understand in case you want to kind of troubleshoot installation later, which item to target to install it. So then comes the option to kind of select which applications you would like to have. By default, not all the applications are selected. For example, in Suite Ultimate, Building Design Suite Ultimate, InfraWorks, 3ds Max Design, they are not selected. So if you create a deployment and you find out that these applications are not there, so that's because it wasn't checked at the time. So you have to make sure that the checkbox is checked for the application you would like to be part of your deployment. Another option here, the quick thing is that you kind of click on this arrow button, which takes you into the product configuration options. So that's really in-depth. It depends also on the product itself. Some products allow you to have a deeper configuration option, some do not. For example, AutoCAD gives you the most, but AutoCAD Civil 3D, restricts you from configuration of this Civil 3D installation. So that all depends, on the development team, how much they want to open their MSI files for configuration. And one more important thing, I would like to kind of mention here is they include additional software options during deployment creation. So this is a really, really cool thing to have. Let's say you want to install certain add-on on your system after the deployment creation, which is not out of this product. So you can use this tool to install it and append to your deployment so that when you install the product from your deployment there, that tool will automatically be installed for you. So this tool takes exe or MSI files to install. You can also have options to kind of specify the command line you need to. So this was a very handy tool. For example, recently we just discovered that Map 3D in 2015 doesn't deployment creation. It doesn't pick up the Service Pack 1. It doesn't pick up Service Pack 1, and it seems like there's no option to kind of include it to the deployment. But with this option, include additional software option when you're creating deployment, you can kind of go click add and download the Service Pack and append and include with your deployment. And at the end, system gonna install it for you. Okay, so the next one is let's say we went in and now we are inside the AutoCAD 2015 configuration options. So you have options checking the subcomponents for your Autodesk AutoCAD products, and you have also options to some checking or unchecking products for your some features for your AutoCAD product. So by default, typical is selected here, but if you select custom, so you have more options. Let's say like in unchecking drawing encryption. If you would like to share a drawing to someone else, outside of your organization. The second thing that comes like where to create a support content. So this option is not available. These two options are not available when you do the installation right away. So deployment creation gives you the option to modify or alter it. So you can have options to kind of select the locations in any way you want to, like in a custom folders, single share folder, program install folders, or so on. One thing to note here is if you happen to select a program install folder, what happens is when you install a product on your system and you start the AutoCAD, the end user starts the AutoCAD, all end user related AutoCAD products, which normally is saved into these end user's profile roaming Autodesk and the product name folders, will be inside the program installs folder. And if it happens so that the end user runs or clicks reset AutoCAD on a default setting, it's going to corrupt the installation for you, and you may run into lots of troubles for it. So I would avoid that unless there is a special need for you guys to kind of use the option for program install folder. And then you have options also to kind of add or modify the path, to the supported file path, for your product. Cool thing here is also to kind of, you can add your files. Like you can add like a map drive. If you have set of files on your network, you're sharing it, and that map drive is mapped correctly to your end user computers. You can kind of, add that location to your client's system. Like to the deployment. To educate your deployment, to know what to find where. This tool also, this option also, it's very well used, when it comes to the, like distributing the custom ARC files or distributing custom shortcuts, or like for other applications, or many other stuff, or batch files. So it's very easy to do that. Just by default, C and cast data and these parts are not in the system, so it has like install directory. And if you open this one up, it's going to give you some other options. But what I did here is that I added like a custom drive. So you click add the drive. You can do C, D, and let's say the map drive if you have. So you can add that first. Then you can add the folder to it. And then you can add the resource. Like you select the folder and click browse to find the resource. So during the deployment creation, all these resources are taken, based on the location you provide to the customer, to this wizard from here, and it's going to record all this drive, all this path for you to kind of build or include that resource for you into the desired folder. Okay, so that's again drive, folder, and browse. That's what you need. In case you want to remove something, just select that and click remove. On the right-hand side, there is also option for additional software. So that's, if you happen to want to Oh, I'm really sorry. Like in this case, what I have is I have wrong shortcut, wrong screencast, unfortunately. So what I was hoping here is there's also option for you guys to kind of include create a custom shortcut. So it's a very, very close and very much resembles to this screenshot. So when you put the shortcut name and shortcut parameters, right, you need to make sure that you click somewhere in the white space to let the deployment creation wizard to take that information for you. And again, I really apologize for my mistake. These two screens look so much similar that I just kind of missed that. I'm really sorry for that. So next, you click. I have options to add the service pack to your deployment. So there's few different ways of doing that. You can do during the deployment creation. If the service pack is available, you should have an option to kind of include service pack, and you will wizard will connect to Autodesk server, and it will kind of list the service pack available for you, and you have option to add it right to your service pack. You have also option not to add the service pack to the deployment. In case let's say create a deployment today and service pack was not available, but let's say 6 months later service pack became available, you can come back to your deployment around the modified deployment wizard and append that and include that service pack from here. So you click this option, include service pack, and then browse to your service pack MSP file to include with your deployment. Here is a command line how to extract MSP file from the service pack installer executable file. So it's basically to use the E-switch and run the command from the command line as admin user. Usually, every single service pack README file contains this information for you guys to. Again, like as I mentioned earlier, map3 for some reason is not able to locate the available service pack 3. So in that case, you can include the service pack as an additional software through the deployment creation, which we talked earlier. Okay, now there are known issues, with including the service packs. One of the known issues, the very famous one, was in AutoCAD 2013 service pack, right? Because when if the Servicepack 1 was part of the installation, for AutoCAD 2013 based product, after installation, the system was neglecting or kind of fighting against installing any other AutoCAD 2013 vertical product. So let's say you have AutoCAD 2013 Servicepack 1, then you had a problem installing the AutoCAD Mechanical 2013, for example, on the same system. So that's also not an issue. It's also documented on our web page, on our Up and Ready blog, so you guys can go and check what was there, what was the solution, and how to make sure things were in the way you would like to have it run on your system. Now, behind the network deployment, what happens? So there's a few things, like certain configurations are kept into the deployment name .ini files. Some are kept into the MST file. So here is a screenshot of MSI. Lots of people say like, MSI file. So that's, and it's kind of a closed file, and you cannot really read it, right? But there are some tools, which can let you do that, And here is a kind of screenshot, for example, for the MSI file open in Orca, to let you know what's happening, whatever the changes you make or into your during your deployment creation, it gets stored into the MST file, which is specific to the deployment you create, such as like serial number, such as like a server name and some other software-related parameters as well. So that's for the illustration purposes for you guys, and here's some links, how to go and understand more about the Orca. And if you do some programming, if you do have some programming background, you'll be able to kind of get to know what's that. Now in Up and Ready blog, we have a couple the posts related to when one would use the Orca. Let's say like finding out the GUID number for a product code. Like if you have many products, it's much faster to do it through the Orca, or like if you want to kind of change some and create a modifier for many different products. If you have on your company, like probably the Orca would be a much faster way of doing that than going back and running the modified deployment wizard. And so then after deployment creation, for example here, this is a kind of a network share, where I created my build instance with Ultimate deployment. I can notice here is two shortcuts. One is default, the other one is all. Default is like a default deployment, which includes only the products selected by default. All includes everything in it. So these are two shortcuts, when you create a deployment, it creates only one shortcut for you. But after that, if you go to create a modified deployment tool, if you start this tool, like you have an option to modify deployment. So I just don't want to start it, because it's going to take way more time than we have for this webinar. Good thing also with deployment creation, I really want to mention is known issue with BPSU 2012. So when we had to kind of split the setup, I used the tool to use the workaround to split the setup INI files for product deployment, so that resultant deployment was more workable. And here is a kind of link to the post we have on our blog, which basically at the time systems were as fast, like a 32-bit deployment of systems, and we had like huge monstrous building instance with Ultimate 2012. The first suites, when we started doing it, and some systems were failing it. So the workaround is to kind of split it, not to give the users to see so many products, but like see only ones, AutoCAD-based ones, and then the Revit-based ones to create the two deployments. And here's all the workaround. There's a video on how to do that, and you can use the same workflow to apply to any other version of the product you have. So this is a kind of, again, the create deployment. If you click create and modify deployment, it will give you the three options. Now, create a new deployment configuration. So if you select create a new deployment configuration, you have to have everything, on your deployment package. You remember the checkbox, I mentioned in the earlier slides, we have to kind of uncheck it so that the deployment can include everything and not only the programs are related to this particular deployment. So then you can use the kind of, you can modify the current deployment, which actually modifies your deployment, like let's say changing the license server name, or tweaking the deployment the way you want, or adding the service pack to it. Or you can use the current deployment as a template. So you can create a new deployment, so it's going to create a new shortcuts for the deployment, which are different modified settings in it. Here we have a workflow, how to move a deployment from one system to the other. So basically what you do is like you take a deployment from a system A and then you copy it on a system B. Okay, you can use a robocopy, you can use some Windows copy utilities, but you have to make sure that it's copied properly. You don't have any error messages. You have to make sure that the end result, the folder size, file count, everything is matches with your original deployment. And before you do move the deployment, you have to make sure that you have a good deployment. Like run, test, install, and verify that it's actually working for you. So once you move and copy there, then there are certain paths that needs to be updated. You can do manually even through modifying the INI files, but much easier is to use create a modified tool, to let the wizard do this for you automatically. And here are the steps how to do it. So you basically modify, once you copy the deployment to a different, on your second folder, you modify the shortcut parameters, make sure that you're picking up the correct one, otherwise it's going to try to connect to your original deployment. And so here's all the list, what you have to modify, as an example, and then run the modify deployment, and it will do it in about a minute to update everything for you, so that you can after that use and install your deployment from your new location. And when you do the installation on your system, you have to make sure that you have admin rights on the system you're installing the product, and you make sure that antivirus is not running. You have firewall disabled between your deployment host and your target system, and you have USC disabled, antivirus off, and just run the installer and make sure that the temp folder is empty, because as I said, installer creates a lot of information there, such as the log files, and in case something goes wrong, log files are tremendous help to understand what went wrong and helps us to design the action plan to overcome failed installations. And again, so here's, for example, the screenshot of the temp folder with all the kind of log files created by just the AutoCAD installation, in this case. And again, log files, how to do the log files, how to read them, that's all the next week's webinar. And I'll strongly advise you guys to come join us next week. And the same time, same day, Thursday, 11 o'clock. So that's the location where you can find today's presentation. Autodesk.com, autodesk.box.com/OpenReadyIQ4. Okay, thank you very much for being with me during this webinar.
Okay, Avto, can you hear me? Thanks
Yes,
for your time. I'm just going to review some of the questions that came through. Thanks for attending so far. One of the questions that was really important was about service packs, basically, in 2013, potentially in 2014, and kind of like what's the best workflow. And because of these updates that happen, I'm almost inclined to say that it's best to not include
Yes.
updates. Avto, what do you think about that?
Yes.
For troubleshooting, basically.
For troubleshooting, yes, but in the same time, it all depends also, the tools there, for you guys to include, and it's supposed to work, let's put it this way, and if for any reason it doesn't work for you, and, we identify that problem, then we need to find a workaround. The workaround would be to kind of not install the service packs and install service packs later.
Yep.
For example, if we had an option to include additional software with the 2013 deployment creation, so my suggestion would have been like installing everything, all the products, and after that including every single service pack manually to the deployment package. And then our service packs would have been installed after products are installed, and not, let's say, AutoCAD installed with service pack, then AutoCAD architecture failed from the same suite and rolled back the installation. Like, so there are some, I know we do some kind of improvements on it, but you know, if it's again, if you do not include, so that's adds more work for you. So
Yeah.
it depends how comfortable you are with that.
Yeah, I also want to highlight that the latest downloads from the subscription center and also from our virtual agent download has an R1 in the label now, and that actually has like a service pack already included in it. So, and that's mainly for the quote unquote heartbleed fix, because that's what Service Pack 1 solved back in April. So if you are using the deployment tools, I would probably just use that newer version of the download so that you don't get that issue. I'm not sure if the USB media has the new updates, but I'm sure that if the media is available, they would have included that component. There was another question about creating a deployment on Server 2008. Maybe you can answer that, Avto. My answer was to create it on a valid system and then use your move deployment tip trick, basically.
That's right. So that would be my suggestion as well, you know, because some applications, you know, they don't recognize the Windows Server 2008 as a valid operating system, and, you know, they just do not initiate the installation option for you to kind of create a deployment or install the product. Because again, you know, when you do the deployment creation, even though you're not installing your product on your system, you use a Windows installer. And since as you use the Windows installer, as it was one of the processes, remember guys, you know, which runs during the deployment creation. So it will read the deployment and read the file, and it checks the prerequisites, you know, which are included into the setup binary files, and may fail. You know, like the best way would be to, I personally would do like something like create a deployment on a Windows 7 system, a powerful system, and then you host it. You know, you can start creating a deployment on Windows 7, and then you can target to your server to save those files there. And also, when it comes to the server, it also depends, you know, what other applications you're running on the server. You know, there could be some conflicts as well, you know, like which becomes evident, you know, when we start troubleshooting the issues, like, you know, running installer from the server or not. But, you know, I agree with David, you know, like create a deployment on a Windows 7 system and then move it manually on anywhere you want to, and make sure that, you know, the folder you're moving deployment has a full access to everyone whoever wants to install deployment from that system.
Okay, I think that's about the only questions that we have that were done during the presentation. You know, basically Service Pack updates was a hot one, and what else? Moving a deployment. Well, there's one question about how to install. How do you install a Service Pack after the deployment has been created? How would you install that?
Well, so install that means like, you know, you are working on a system or, you know, which has a product on it, and you want to install a service pack. Now, certain service packs, you know, sometimes they do require access to original media. And if your deployment was coming from a deployment, from installation, product installation came from a deployment, during the installation of the service pack will go to your registry and find out, you know, from which source your system was your product was installed, and tries to kind of locate the installation source files to make a connection and install successfully.
Yeah.
So if for any reason it's not able to do that, you won't be able to install it. It's going to give you the error message, like usually 1624.
Yeah.
So it's also common, I know, when deployment install is created on a map drive, and, you know, for some time in the next month, the map drive letters changed, and, you know, they're now redirected to a different drive or different areas. So that's could be a problem too. And I believe one of the power skills, you know, we included into the Autodesk blog includes that option. You know, let's say you are installing the service pack, and the service pack is not able to locate your installation source files. You can re-download the installer and then guide the service pack installer to the source files of the program. It could be like one or two DLL files in the service pack needs to correct and register so properly on your system. And if it's not able to find it, you know, it's going to fail. Yeah,
I think I also want to add to it is when I answered the question is in some of the flags, you can actually install a service pack silently. So I included that in a post, which I had to do. So like if you've already installed your AutoCAD but didn't include the service pack, there are ways to command line install something silently as well. So there's some tips for that. And there's also some flags. So I've included some posts on our blog that kind of reference it. And I mean, most of them are on the Microsoft help files, basically for MSI exec, but you can grab it from there, or and usually stuff that we've published is something like workflows that we've done that kind of work. So that's about it. So as long as you have the right flags for running MSI exec, that will probably also help as well.
And just to kind of add something on this, one more thing, like in some, it's not usually with service pack, but in some updates, hard fixes may require you to kind of check and verify that you agree with the terms. Because sometimes the hard fix can fix one thing, but take a problem to the other one. So you have to be aware of it. Sometimes it asks you to check that you agree with the terms this hard fix or service pack brings to your system. And if that's the option, you may not be able to install silently, because it will require interaction from your side, whoever does the installation, to make the checkbox checked for you.
Okay. Does anyone else have any last-minute questions? We have 10 more minutes to go. Anyone want to type anything? After, you want to maybe go through some of the questions, make sure I didn't miss any.
Okay, wait a second.
No, I'm talking in the questions.
Yes. Okay. Just I want to kind of bring back to the last slide, because okay, so so the error 404, that was come from the up and running IQ4 site. Just I want to kind of be sure that that's not the case.
All right. I think we should be okay. I think we covered most of the questions. I just want to thank everyone for their time, and again, we'll be having a really good seminar for next week for analyzing log files, and I think that is about it. Avto, do you have anything you want to add?
Now, I just want to kind of add something to the Scott's question. Like, it's any way to deploy service pack after I have deployed a network deployment.
Yeah. I just thought about it, Scott. I haven't tested that. Like, since the development deployment gets the option to add additional software, I'm just thinking, if you go to, again, so it's not tested, it's just an idea at this time. If you go to a deployment creation and just select add additional software and add your service packs there, and like if you can maintain your software installation checked as well, because during the installation, if the installer detects software being installed, it will not install the software, but starts installing the service packs. That's an option for you. Or you can just kind of check the software and just include the service pack into the add additional software. Again, it's not been tested, but logically, I think it should work. That's my answer to you. Thank you for the question.
All right. So thank you for your time, and I think we can end off this presentation.
Again, thank you very much for everybody who attended and stayed with me during this webinar. And please, if there's any questions, we'll have a feedback site on our forum as well for this webinar. If there is questions later on you came across, just give us a question, type out there, and we'll find answers for you. Thanks again.